Jesus appeared to me and gave 3 warnings. In the world of politics, there are moments that sit at the edge of the unbelievable. Moments that force us to question where power ends and something deeper begins. Tonight's story is one of those moments. It begins in the exhausted hours after a long security crisis, when a leader, drained from responsibility, fell asleep, only to awaken inside a dream that would change the course of his leadership, his nation, and perhaps even history itself. A dream where Jesus, Isa, revered in Islam, appeared not with the symbols of Western art, but with the presence of an ancient prophet delivering a warning that cut straight into the heart of power. Dear viewers, what you are about to hear is not just a story. It is a political mirror. If you value truthful, fearless storytelling, subscribe to the channel now, because tonight's investigation may be the most unsettling one yet. Dear friends, the story begins on the night of August 15th, 2023. Exhausted from 18 relentless hours managing a security crisis in Burkina Faso's northern provinces, Ibrahim Traoré collapsed into bed still wearing his uniform. He expected sleep to claim him instantly. Instead, he stepped into a realm he had no language for, a space that was neither fully indoors nor outdoors, filled with a soft but powerful light that seemed to come from everywhere at once. The air around him felt thick with meaning, as if the world had paused to deliver a message. And then he saw him. The figure did not resemble the European portrayals familiar in global art. There was no pale skin, no polished robes, no golden halo. Instead, the man standing before him looked unmistakably Middle Eastern, weathered by sun and wind, dressed simply, his hands calloused like a laborer's. Yet his eyes held a depth that felt impossible, ancient, almost overwhelming. Without needing introduction, Traoré knew exactly who he was looking at. Jesus, Isa ibn Maryam, the prophet honored in Islam. Ibrahim, the figure said, his voice strangely gentle and commanding at once. Traoré felt instinctively compelled to kneel, but before he could move, Jesus gestured lightly for him to remain standing. "We don't have much time," he continued. "There is something you need to understand, something I came to warn you about." The world around them shifted instantly, and they stood overlooking a version of Ouagadougou shrouded in smoke, fear, and chaos. Fires burned in different sectors, gunfire echoed through the streets, and civilians ran in blind terror. "When is this?" Traoré asked. Jesus answered with unsettling calm. 6 months from now, if you choose wrong." The scenery changed again. Now Traoré saw a future version of himself, older, colder, sitting behind a desk, signing orders with empty eyes. Orders he didn't read. Orders he didn't question. In the dream, he had become what he despised. A ruler who had traded justice for control, sovereignty for paranoia, leadership for domination. Jesus' voice cut through the heaviness. This is what happens when a leader forgets why he took power, when control becomes more important than service, when fear replaces justice. Traoré protested, insisting he would never become such a man. But Jesus interrupted sharply, saying every tyrant in history believed the same thing. Every leader who fell into corruption first convinced himself that he was the exception, chosen, indispensable, immune to the seduction of authority. It was a warning that struck Ibrahim deeply, because he had already begun feeling the intoxicating weight of power creeping into his daily decisions. Then Jesus revealed the heart of his visit. 3 warnings, 3 temptations that would come to test him. The first, he explained, would come from Traoré's own allies, military officers urging him to crush dissent, arrest political opponents, silence critics, and secure stability before resistance could grow. They would tell him that mercy is weakness, that strength requires suppression, that protecting the revolution demands harshness. But Jesus insisted that such advice is the first step toward tyranny, the first crack in a leader's moral core. The second temptation would come from foreign powers. Traoré saw images of diplomats from France, the United States, and China offering aid, weapons, recognition, partnerships, all in exchange for subtle compromises. Jesus warned that foreign offers always come with a price, and that once sovereignty is traded away, even in small pieces, the revolution becomes hollow. He cautioned Ibrahim to remember that no amount of development is worth becoming someone else's puppet. The third temptation was the most painful. Traoré saw a trusted friend, a brother in arms, accused of corruption. He saw himself tempted to protect this friend out of loyalty, out of gratitude, out of human attachment. Jesus warned that the moment a leader shields the corrupt, even those closest to him, he has already abandoned the revolution. Justice must come before friendship, he said, or the entire movement collapses from within. As the dream faded, Jesus assured him he would receive a sign within 24 hours, a message from someone he did not expect, confirming the truth of what he had seen. And indeed, hours before the deadline expired, Traore received a phone call from France, from an elderly Catholic priest who had once advised Thomas Sankara. The priest told him he too had a dream in which Jesus appeared and instructed him to deliver 3 messages, 3 warnings identical to the ones Ibrahim had received. This confirmation shook him to the core. 2 weeks later, the first test arrived. His military officers demanded the arrest of journalists and activists. They insisted such actions were necessary for national security. Traore refused. Instead of crushing dissent, he listened to critics, turning some into allies. It was the harder path, but it proved Jesus' warning true. Months later came the second test. A foreign ambassador offered economic aid and military support, but only if Burkina Faso softened its stance on sovereignty. Traore turned the offer down, choosing dignity over dependency, even though it worsened economic pressures. Then came the third test. A close ally was caught embezzling funds. Traore confronted him privately. When the man begged for protection, Ibrahim made the agonizing choice to uphold justice, removing him from power. That decision cost him friendships and political capital, but preserved the integrity of the revolution. For the next 2 years, Traore continued navigating the razor's edge between power and service, temptation and principle. He made mistakes, stumbled, corrected course, but he never forgot the warnings. And whether the dream came from God, from Jesus, or from the depths of his own conscience, he understood that its truth mattered more than its origin. He remains aware that every day presents new temptations, but he also knows that leadership is not about perfection. It is about constant vigilance. A leader becomes a tyrant not in a single moment, but in a series of small, unchallenged choices. And so, Traore wakes each morning remembering the man he saw in his dream, the future version of himself he refuses to become. Dear viewers, what happened on that August night is more than a political tale. It is a warning about leadership, a mirror for every nation, and a reminder that even the powerful must remain accountable to something greater than themselves. If this investigation opened your eyes, subscribe now. We have many more stories ahead, stories that reveal the hidden pressures shaping global power.